tall, gangly thing?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to High Roll Radio number 7. My name is Nick DiPasquale. You may know me as Gangly, and this is a live Teamfight Tactics call-in show where you, the viewer, are just as much a part of the show as we are. And today, I'm joined by a very special guest. It's Admirable, TFT caster. I spent a lot of time actually talking to Admirable. There's very few people who I actually will spend a lot of time in calls with, just talking TFT. So this is very fun for me to have you on the show, especially this is a landmark show. Never before have we done a one-on-one show before. We've always done two guests. I've always said that I'm nervous about only having one person. So I brought someone on who I know could just talk for the full 90 minutes without me asking a question.
Well, I wanted to mention right at the start of this that it was like, well, you don't really have much of an option when you're talking to me other than to talk for a long time, because I'm just going to keep going.
That's
like,
true.
I feel like Ramblin's name was kind of heisted from me in this regard, where he's very articulate and well thought out, and I just keep going.
I'll get there. Eventually, I'll get there. So, Admirable, how are you doing otherwise? How's your set grind been? How's everything set 7 been?
Set 7 has been quite interesting for me because I've been seeing so many different takes on it, where like some players just love it and they're like, oh, this set's so great, everything's well panned out. I do love the top down design of it as well, like how the actual traits feel and how they're designed. It feels like they really capture that. The aesthetic is there. The dragons thing was the one I definitely was most concerned about, as I think everybody was coming into it. But I have just seen some heated takes against the dragon aspect, and I'm not going to name names for it. I'm already revved up enough. The last thing I need to do is create more drama with that aspect right now. But there are players who are like, the dragons, like, this would be such a good set without the dragon aspect of it. And I was like, man, how would you fix this? And I had a couple of ideas last night. This is what I wasted my lucid dream on last night. I went back into that meditative state where I'm trying to get back into my high roll on the lucid states, because those are just fun. I tend to use them actually on real life stuff, though. I'm a very boring individual in that regard. I digress. The set 7, I think, is fantastic. I don't mind the dragons so much. I think they're pretty cool. I do think that maybe this could have been a better balanced design aspect of it. The climb has been going well. Today did not go so well. But you can't measure your TFT in one day. And that's exactly why we have a snapshot today to look at the top 32 players and see who's getting a buy through.
That's true.
For a tournament that's coming up.
No, you hit Masters really early this set. Earlier than normal for you, or is this kind of on par?
No, this set was definitely like a pretty big string of, I don't want to say like high rolls, but some of the games were just like, ooh, this is just ridiculous. And some of the games where it's just like, how am I going to scrap this together? But this one was, I do want to like try to continue to try as hard as I can, because I want to measure the challenger aspect. The fewer the games, the better in my eyes. And this was Grandmasters in 97 games. And It was Master, I believe, in 68 games.
Yeah,
I don't remember exactly.
I don't know where you are right now, but you were actually on pace to qualify for the Astral Cup.
Yes, and I'm actually, when you mentioned that to me as well, it really drew my attention to that, and I was like, maybe I should try to qualify for Astral Cup here. No one has reached out to me about casting the event. We have a ton of TFT talent right now. I think that deserves to be highlighted. So not really much of a surprise in that regard, but I really should have kept pushing, because, man, I was right there.
Yeah.
And to be able to compete against these guys, start cracking my knuckles and showing them what's what. Show them that the caster's got what it takes too. I can high roll as well. I'm on the radio for it right now.
That's right.
I really should have followed through on that. I wish I would have had more time. Real life has been very pressing in a lot of matters, and I try to separate that a lot from my gaming experience, but. The gaming is, because it's a very large part of my life. This is what I've been following. Video games are effectively 8 years of full-time work for me now.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize that you actually were a competitor before. I mean, if people only know you from TFT, they know you as a caster. They don't really know the competitive side. If anyone listened to my interview with Admirable, you might get a bit more insight on that. But you actually come from this background of competitive gaming at quite a high level.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much made a commitment to games when I was like 12 years old, and to give you an aspect now, I'm turning 37 in a couple days. So it's been a long time, and I still have yet to spike like a championship on these fronts. But a lot of that was due to, I think my financial focus as well. Like I'd say like ages like 18 to 24, it was much more like a You need to make money doing this because you got to pay for like rent and food and stuff. And so a lot of my Magic career shifted towards instead of focusing on winning the tournament, instead I predicted which cards were going to be strong. And then I would buy up as many of those as I could and then sell them for a lot more when people realized that these are the cards you're going to use for all your decks. I went into the poker regard very heavily there. And I was so much more focused on the idea of my ROI than I was on, trying to get a bracelet from, winning a World Series tournament or something like that. Although, I really should have probably drawn that into my focus at some point. I'm not going to go too deep down those rabbit holes, but competition was where I drew it from. And, when I was a kid, it's a huge passion and I wanted to keep that going. And now that I'm an actual adult now, it's to see like that these esports aspects are taking place. If I had this as a kid, I can only imagine how much different my life would have been. So hopefully I could unlock that passion somewhere else there. But yeah, competition was a heavy focus for well over a decade.
Well, I think it's a darn shame that you did not make that push to try and qualify for the Astral Cup.
We'll see. We can still make it there.
Yeah. We'll see what the next one looks like. On the topic of competition, I did want to talk about something, I guess, adjacent to High Roll Radio and some of the things we've been doing here. On the last High Roll Radio, I announced the Tactician's Crown, a New Jersey TFT LAN event that I'm hosting with two other tournament organizers, Psyched and Murmur, very active in the local New Jersey esports space. And we have some really cool things I wanted to just talk about to everyone listening to the show. I don't know how much of the demographic of the show really is in that New Jersey, New York, tri-state area. Still want to talk about it either way, because I think we've got a lot of really cool things going on. The main thing is it's secured, it's locked in as of this morning, is that we are partnered with Ball Street for the event. Ball Street, the organization that is responsible for making Admirable's famous line, "I'm never selling my Goobum stock,"
never,
come to life. And they're working with us to make some really, really cool things happen. I don't want to sound like I'm just shilling for the company.
Shill it. I want to hear.
I want to say this, though. Ball Street is a company who came into TFT not really knowing all that much about the scene. And I've worked with them over the last year or so, maybe year and a half, in a couple different capacities. They really, really care about the scene. And I think that them partnering with Tactician's Crown is actually evidence of that, because we're just a small regional tournament. And I can't leak what they're doing for us, but they are really helping us bring this tournament to life in a few different ways that I'm very excited to announce and very excited to show what we're producing by the end of the tournament. But I want to make it clear, to everyone who is familiar with Ball Street, they are a company worth supporting. And they really do a lot for TFT, much of which people don't quite realize. And we're very lucky to have them in the scene. And I think that long term, Ball Street is a very strong partnership for TFT to have. And I think that we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. There's much more in store, whether it's on the local, regional level or on the national level, like what we're seeing them do with Wisdom and Riot. I just want to say, Ball Street, I appreciate your partnership. I think that a lot of people in TFT do see that, and we hope to have you around even longer.
Because I want to see my Goobum stock keep going up.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. I want to talk about this real quick, actually. Oh, you know what I didn't even do? I didn't even talk about how this show works. This is actually what happens every time Admirable and I get in a call. We just talk. We talk
lose sight of everything and just.
Right.
I'm telling you, rambling.
This is a live Teamfight Tactics call-in show, again, which means that you actually can have an active part in the show if you're watching live on Twitch right now. All you have to do to get into the show is use the exclamation point Discord command. Once you use that command, you'll get into my Discord server. On the left-hand side, you'll see the Submit Takes topic, the text channel. You go in there, give us your take, your hot take, your question, your opinion, whatever it is. We want to talk about it. Put it in there and go into the waiting room and mute your mic. If we like your take, we'll bring you in for a quick mic check and then put you into the stream queue so that we can have you on the show with us. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to Blind. He's in chat right now, also a part of the Discord. He'll walk you through how to get on the show. In the meantime, Nathan, we can keep talking now that I've done my little piece.
A little asterisk to the layout that Gangly just gave you there. If we don't like your take enough, there's a good chance we could bring you in too. So true. It's a very polarized dynamic in that regard. But if we hate it enough, I'm happy to strike you down on that one.
I did want to talk about the aspect of LAN versus online, because I know you come from card games, from poker, much of which obviously there's an online presence, but ultimately a lot of these events take place on LAN.
Oh,
And a
yeah.
lot of people in TFT, there's actually, I think a lot of people come from League, where it's even more so, mainly online unless you're actually in the LCS. For most people playing League of Legends, it's an online experience. Coming into TFT, where it's only been an online experience, a lot of people just don't know what LAN events are like. And I'm not just trying to advertise for my own LAN event. I mean, kind of in the nature of long-term LAN TFT.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you feel like we're missing because we don't have
Golly.
LAN?
I mean, it's so much. Like, I've come from production sides of, pretty much everything you could think of now from the LAN side of things. I started doing online production cast in 2013. It's kind of funny. The first cast I ever did was actually a Magic cast alongside Tan and Grace at the Tan and Grace on Twitter, and we cast an event in Louisiana where we were asked to cast this live Magic State event, and we did that. And at the end of it, I I hope somehow they get a hold of this video because it's going to be funny. They basically tried to not pay me because it was just sort of like here, I'll just give you something sort of aspect on it. And eventually they gave me something. And I think that they had a little bit of a hard call out for it. But that gives you an idea of the low I've been to, where it's the production side of things is my first online digital cast for Hearthstone was is $100 sound good? And it's how long is this? This is going to take 11 hours today. Yeah, no, that sounds great. I just had no idea that it was, it's not like a day-to-day thing. You pour your whole life and your heart and your soul into this in order to be able to really ramp up that one moment that arrives for the point of the tournament. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of energy. It is that one day's work. It feels like a lot more than that when it's all said and done. And, I've been to production events where literally they flew everyone to the Bahamas and put them up into a resort, and then had a production team that was in charge of doing the Super Bowl halftime show. Put on the production for the Hearthstone event. It's been all over the place, and the difference between a high level production LAN event and an online digital tournament is just enormous. It feels like from an overhead perspective, it's not that much different, but my gosh, it is just an unbelievably different experience when you can sit down with the players and you can interview them and you can talk to them and see how they react, and you get to see their energy, and you can feel when that tension starts to build up in the tournament moment. It's so much different than it is in a digital aspect, especially with I'd say the acceptance we have right now, where it's if players don't want to use cameras, they just don't.
Right. Yeah.
Sure. Totally fine. But in live, that camera is in your face. They are moving around. They are swirling around the table, and you got to do it snap quick because the game matters right now. And you're seeing these $10,000 cameras swirl around, and you can feel crowd energy. I remember when Firebat won 2014 World Championship, the crowd got revved up at some point, and he said he could literally feel it through the ground. He could literally feel it in this, what was supposed to be a soundproof booth.
Right.
And I'm like, how do you stop that? That sort of energy completely changes the dynamic of it. And it's one of the most embarrassing casting moments I ever have, because I was so excited when he won that the Firebat is the 214. It was just over the top. And every single time I've watched it, I'm just like, why did I do it that way? And it's just because the excitement was so built up. That was the first time I truly experienced something like that. Even with TFT land too, it's oh my gosh, I can only imagine where this starts. You have 8 people sitting down and playing at the same time.
Right. Well, but even apart from the production side, that doesn't even speak to the camaraderie that comes from sitting next to these people that you met online or that you competed against online, and actually being able to talk about the game, or to have dinner together, or even just watching them as you're beating them. It doesn't. There's a certain element of being together in person that just changes the way you see the game. Even going back to the culture of the online warrior in these first-person shooters. The first game that really got me into esports was Halo 3 back in 2009 or 2010, that era of the MLG days.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was there were players who could perform in online events, but when it came to LAN, they just couldn't do it. They were warriors, and it sparked an entire, I don't want to say generation, but almost a label of players who, there are players who, when push comes to shove, the pressure is on, and they're sitting down with a camera in their face in a LAN event with the casters talking over their gameplay and the arena cheering for or against them. They just can't do it. And
it's different.
It is. It's a different environment, and we are missing that in TFT, where everybody is playing from the comfort of their own home with the ability to turn their camera off so they can completely focus. And we don't know who's going to be able to perform under pressure when we actually do have live events.
It's so enormously different. It's funny you mentioned the MLG thing. Like the first thing that came to mind there was one of the MLG events I went to was for League of Legends, and seeing Captain Jack sit down in that chair and practice for AD carry, that guy was literally loading up games and practicing killing the jungle creeps at the start. This was like 2 hours before their first match. He's literally practicing drawing the jungle creeps down from that corner and making sure that he can min-max it in every regard. And every single time he would mess up on like a frame, you'd see him shake his head and he would close the game and start up a new one. And they'd close the game and start up a new one. He did it till he got it perfect, like 3 times in a row. And then he nodded. And then he just walked over to the side, and it's 12 people or whatever are watching, because the scene it's getting bigger, but it's not quite there yet. But these people are literally wanting autographs from Captain Jack, and it's just like, how much different is this? Like, than being at home and being able to crack open a cold soda if you want. It's just it really is not an adequate way, I'd say, to explain what the different feeling is. It's one of those things where it's like, I guess you weren't there. Which always reminds me of that terrible joke that Neil Armstrong used to make, where he would stand in a live presence and he would make a horrible joke about flying to the moon. And then everyone would look around like, really? This is a joke? And he'd go, I guess you had to be there. It's like, okay, asshole, I get it.
Yeah. All right, so I want to introduce some of the topics that we're going to be talking about tonight. And the way we're going to do it tonight is actually, there's a few things that we can bring up throughout the show, but I want to allow callers to kind of call in at any time. So that's why I'm going to preface some of these topics beforehand, because if the callers have an opinion, I want you guys to get them in now so we can bring you in at the appropriate time. Main things going on right now, though, are the Astral Cup takes place this weekend for the first time with the open bracket portion of the top 128. Where the top 32 has already been pre-floated into the second weekend. We're going to talk player lists. We're going to talk formats, whatever it is you guys want to talk about. All things Astral Cup. Feel free to call in about that. The Don't Talk If You Don't Know Power Rankings are going to be coming out this weekend or this week for set 7. I'm actually going to be showing my ballot live on air. Feel free to flame me. I actually, honestly, even looking at it today, I know exactly. I actually would change it. So I'm down to flame myself for it, but I think that I have a few spicy takes in my ballot that many people will disagree with.
Why wouldn't you just change it then?
Because it was I had to submit it yesterday.
Oh, it's a closing time. Oh,
yeah. And basically, I woke up this morning and I was looking at all the data again, and I was like, man, I made a huge oversight on my ballot, and I deeply regret it, and I hope I don't get flamed for it.
Oh, okay. Well, get yourself. I mean, you've kind of just asked for it at this point. I mean, what else am I supposed to do?
Broden says, as long as you didn't put Solus number 1, and I didn't. Well. I'll leak that right now. I will never. I don't care if Solus wins every tournament for the rest of TFT's lifespan. I'll never put Solus number 1 because I can't take the backlash. I can't handle it. I hope Solus never does well again, so I never have to put him high in my ballot.
Goodness.
I learned. I'll
tell you this. I'm never putting Solus at number 1 probably ever again as well. But I'm certainly never like closing him out of my top 20. Like that guy, there's just something about the game that he gets, and it's unlike everybody else. He takes it so casually, and he's just very matter of fact. And then as you watch the meta kind of unfold, you're like, "Damn, Solus was right." There's a couple things that got honed, but the instinct is pretty spot on. Like he hits the bullseye, but just not directly in the center.
Nobody else can warp the universe to make their game work better than Solus. He seems to be one of those players where, despite the fact that so many people disagree with what he's doing, it always just kind of works out in his favor.
He just gets it.
Yep. So other things we can talk about. I said Astral Cup, Don't Talk If You Don't Know Power Rankings. I also sent out a tweet earlier today showcasing some stats of the correlation between games played and average placement. It's a little bit nerdier of a topic than some of the other ones. But there were some really cool takeaways that I am down to talk about if any callers want to take a look at that tweet that I sent out and you have an opinion on it. I know there are a bunch of people in my Discord or people that watch the show that are into data that might have a more nuanced take than I had on it. So feel free to call in about that. So while we wait for some of these takes to populate, let's talk about Astral Cup. Do you have the player list pulled up, Admirable?
Yeah, the player list here. I was actually following this pretty close last night because I really wanted Ramblin to close in the top 32, but he was just having some low rolls. My gosh,
and for the record, for anyone who doesn't
heartbreaker.
know, for anyone who doesn't know, going into yesterday, Ramblin was sitting in the top 32, kind of on the cusp. I don't know exactly if he needed to play or not. I wasn't paying that close attention, but he unfortunately fell to 34th by the end of the night. And I'll let Nathan talk more about what those games actually looked like, but he was very close to making top 32. Ramblin, who historically is not typically at the top of the ladder. I'm pretty sure he actually played much more at the beginning of this set than he normally does. But yeah, Nathan, you actually watched his games. What were they like?
It's watching Ramblin is so unique because he's able to talk with chat so very casually while he's doing it. Like, it feels like there's not very much pressure, but kind of going into, I'll put this in perspective from my Pacific time as well. So at midnight, that's when it closes out. And so it's about 10:30 for me, and I'm watching Ramblin play, and he just has a nightmare of a bad outcome in some spots. His opponents are just cranking it. Like, it feels like they're like, oh, I need this specific unit, press 2 gold. There's 2 copies. And it just every single time it was like, next player, worst rotation, next player, worst rotation, next player. It just, everything was going wrong. Like, so much of it's going right, but these critical points are just building up game after game after game. And I'm like, I don't think Ramblin's going to make it into this buy spot. Like, he needs to have some strong performances. And then, of course, the most crucial game of the night shows up, and he takes a look around after having this gold expenditure and this terrible econ and these terrible items. And he's like, I'm pretty sure this is just 6th place. I was like, oh no. I really didn't want to say it. He is fighting tooth and nail. Every single spot he is trying to find some small window of opportunity. And it's just every single time it feels like a tunnel that he's going to have to just mine his way through in order to get to a top 4 spot. Nothing comes together. His opponents all have it the entirety of the game. It's another bottom 4 finish. And it's just, it pretty much, like, it felt like a summary of his tournament year for set 6, where it's right there every time, but something's missing. And I'll tell you what, very, very rarely do I see something that Ramblin does and go, I would have done that differently. And I will say for set 7, I do feel like that's cropped up a little bit more often. But Ramblin is an unbelievably strong player. And last night, I felt like maybe this is a point of bias from my perspective, but it felt like last night he was just spot on in his points, and just nothing ever came together. He never had a strong opportunity to do anything. It was always high risk, low reward.
It's tough. I will say, okay, so I have a couple thoughts on Ramblin. I wish I had watched the games. I was not able to watch them last night. There are 2 things I noticed, though. The first is that, like I mentioned before, I wish I had the data to actually back this up. And I if I'm wrong, someone call me out in the comments, or Ramblin, if you want to call me out, feel free to do that. But I really do think that Ramblin played way more at the beginning of this set than he normally does. Ramblin's obviously, like, historically known for low game count, high average placement, high top 4 rate. When I was looking at his stats, one of the things that stood out to me was that I remember the beginning of set 6, Ramblin holding a 70 plus top 4 rate for the majority of the early set, maybe even through the majority of the set. And I know that right now he's actually holding something closer to 65, 66%, which may not sound like a huge difference, but it actually is. Ramblin has kind of always been the player where every single game on the ladder brings him closer to ranking up. Like, he pretty much just only top 4s when he's actually playing on ladder, because he's significantly better than the other players on ladder. And I wonder if he felt a little bit more pressure to play more this set, or, I mean, again, if I'm wrong and he didn't play more and he's always kind of been on pace, then disregard this. But I feel like he played more than he normally does. And I don't know what it was, but I could see that being an issue for him, because he is typically the player that watches more than he plays. And because of that, he soaks in all this information until he enters a tournament, or until he has his pivotal moment in ladder where he needs to climb. And then he just does it for free because he knows so much more than anyone else.
That is an interesting point you make, because it does feel like he's playing a bit more. To give you like a bit of a perspective, like, so you look at set 6.5, he has 239 games played. When you look at set
Total.
6, yeah, it's what it says. This is according to lolchess.gg. When you look up Ramblin's profile for North America, you look at it's set 6. That was set 6.5. It's set 6. It was 412 games played. So this could be like a tournament scene difference there. But right now, Ramblin on set 7 has 151 games played.
Yeah, I mean we're 2 patches.
It does
in.
feel like a lot more considering all of those factors. But at the same time, like, gosh, when you look at a 64.2% top 4 rate, that's enormous. Like, sure, in set 6, we're looking at 70% here. But I want to say 2 things there, which is number 1, I do think the player field is getting a lot stronger since then. And then number 2, just I've been watching a lot of Ramblin for quite a while now. I very much agree with his aspect that observing things and evaluating them is a very strong learning process and a very powerful tool for this game. He's sitting at 64.2% so far in set 7, which is still very high. It is a big difference though. But man, it just really feels like his games have been pretty low rolly.
Okay, yeah.
Like it's just constantly like it's just not there. Like when players have these opportunities, you can watch them take advantage of it in so many regards. I just feel like the opportunities haven't been there. He's been just having to like rest with these, like, here's what the game gives you.
So I want to be careful about not saying too much because, again, I didn't watch these games. But on like a macro level, one thing that Ramblin has been very good at in past sets is his resilience to low roll. Obviously, everybody can low roll. But players like Ramblin, he is one of those players that when he's actually on, when it really does click for him, he's able to make something out of nothing. And these strings of 66666 are very uncharacteristic for Ramblin, I would say, even in the midst of low roll. And I didn't watch the games. I don't know the context. It's very possible that he hit the lowest percentile of the odds in every single game, and there was no way for him to actually make something out of it. It's just, we've seen him do it in the past. And obviously, this could just be a blip. This could be an outlier. There could be nothing that he could have done better. It just raises the question of, is Ramblin approaching the set differently? And is him not making top 32 for Astral Cup one of the effects of that? I'm not going to put words in his mouth. I'm not going to pretend like I know more than I actually do. It seems insane that he's not top 32 going into the Astral Cup. And I feel bad for every open bracket player that now has to play against him, because I guarantee you Ramblin is spending this entire week studying the game, making sure that he's completely prepared, and he is going to dominate this weekend at Astral Cup.
But is what Gangley saying that Ramblin, the pressure has built up too much and he's not able to do it anymore? He's not the player he once was.
Oh gosh, no, don't say that. No. I don't
feel that way either, but I do feel like also in addition to watching Ramblin stream, it does feel like there's been like a slight amount of tension, which is a lot more than you usually get from his social standard. Ramblin's extremely articulate, he's extremely calm. But I do recall at one point yesterday, he's like, I'm going to go ahead and time you out. I believe you have good intent here, but just come on, man. I know that. And he times this guy out. I didn't even see what the comment was, but he's like, you think I don't know that I want Nico 2 and Shyvana 2 and Yasuo in my composition? Look at what I have. Like something to that regard. And it just nobody touches it. Nobody addresses it. And I was like, it's not even that big of a deal. It's just, when you put it in perspective, it was a lot more than what I've normally hear Ramblin say from that side of things. So I do feel like, this is 2 points building up in my head, at least, which is number 1, he knows he's going to miss on the top 32. That sucks. And then right then someone just makes a ridiculous comment that's trying to like backseat his gameplay. And he's like, all right, you know what? That's enough. And it's just, it's rare you get that from Ramblin.
Yeah, it is.
He's so well connected. But I will say that like when you have a miss like this, and you had like the tournament setting that he had for set 6, where it was constantly right there. I mean, he's losing like the 4th element on the tiebreakers. Like you're having to go that deep to figure out who's taking that spot. He's missing those like again and again. And then in addition to that, this top 32, that self-questioning point is going to come up in your mind at some point. Now, how you address it, I have no idea. I think Ramblin's going to take it pretty well. But that point is going to come up at some point. I don't give a fuck who you are. That point is going to come up, and it's going to hurt when it does.
I don't want to dwell too much on Ramblin, because I'm sure Ramblin feels bad about not being 32, and I don't want this to turn into us, dancing on his grave. Both of us have an insane amount of respect for Ramblin', as does basically everybody in North American TFT scene. And obviously I want to point it out, but I don't want to dwell on it too much. I do want to just say on the record, Ramblin', and I think I speak for Nathan as well, we're both hoping that whatever it is that just happened on Saturday is the exception to the rule, and that this weekend you are going to turn it around and absolutely dominate. Every single person in North America wants to see you on top, and I know you'll get there. So thank God I'm not in this tournament because I don't want to be in your lobby. So there's a couple other players I do want to draw attention to, though, because we're in the open bracket stage of the Astral Cup going into this weekend. And in this portion of the tournament, you typically have a handful of these high caliber big name players who didn't make top 32. Examples of that would be Ramblin'. I would consider Broccoli one of those players. He's maybe not as high profile, but strong tournament performances in the past. We've seen him at the top many different events. Ramkev is another one who typically does limit test. And I do want to call out Kana, who pointed something out about my data, that it does punish players who treat ladder as a limit test or a way to learn the game. Definitely agree with you there,
Sure.
Kana. But yeah, you know, there's a certain level, a certain amount of high level players that are entering this event, but this is the part of the tournament where it really does allow for up and comers to make their name and, you know, find themselves on the final stage. And one player I want to draw attention to was in the race for the top 32, came down to the final day or to the final game and was not able to make it happen, or the last couple games. And that player is Clear. I don't know who this player is. I've never heard of them before. I was looking at the data on Sunday when I was making my my ballot for Don't Talk If You Don't Know, and I saw that Clear had low number of games played and a very good average placement, not as good as some of the other players that made me want to call them out. But I do want to say that the stats tend to indicate that Clear is on the path to be in the same tier as some of the players who do have a very high profile about them. Let me just look at the data real quick. I would say, yeah, similar trend line as players like Goobums, Noob Owl, Asa, DQA, Goose, Bertosaurus. I mean, these are all the players that you know, and they are performing above average to the point where I would say everybody should be keeping an eye on Clear. I think that this is a player who I have not seen play personally, but their trend tends to indicate that they are better than the average challenger player who is entering this event. And I would not be surprised to see a player like that make it to top 32, make it to the final day, and maybe even make a push for that final lobby.
Yeah, this moniker doesn't really stand out to me either. And that probably for a number of reasons. The first one is just because it's Clear. It's not going to stand out that much. But when you go and look at their LOL chess profile as well, set 7 challenger right now, and this line on their challenger profile is not weak. It is quite strong. Average rank 377 after 151 games played, 60.3% top 4 rate. But you go down and you start looking at the next one, set 6.5 Grandmaster, set 6 Grandmaster, set 5.5 Challenger. Okay. Set 5 Master, set 4.5 Master, set 4 Master, set 3.5 GM, set 3 Challenger. It feels like this is like a focus point to me almost, that this player is very strong, but that they maybe just don't have the time for it. They have the time for it right now, and are we about to see that come up in Astral Cup?
I don't know, and I hope so. I love when we really get to see players who don't have a big name, because that's all it takes with TFT. It takes one tournament for a player to earn their name, and you could say that's maybe with the issue of TFT not being super consistent, and it's possible for a good player to high roll their way into a final lobby. I don't really care about that, because to me, the narrative of a player making it through open bracket, showing before the event that they have the stuff to compete with the very best, and then having that Cinderella run, making it to the final day, making it to the final lobby, I love that, and I hope it happens. I hope that we see a player like Clear actually making it through. I think that would be really, really fun. Forget the old guard, kick them all out of there. It's time for the new blood to come in.
I'm always welcoming this sort of story. It's just very exciting to see. The thing that I like about this too is when I look at their set 7 profile thing, and it's showing you the top percentages from the last 20 games. I'm seeing a very similar amount of choices that I'm making, and I'm like, yes, I'm doing something right.
Okay.
When I go back and I look at these, I'm like, yes, I am picking a lot of the right units here. That part always gives me a little bit of self-confidence boost, which I feel like is pretty critical to me right now. I digress. Clear looks like they have a pretty strong line if they're ready to focus on this one. And wow, when you look at like these last 2 days, they had an enormous dip and then an enormous spike up. We're talking they went from 764 on their LP to 557 in 1 day.
Oh,
and
man,
then
I know that feeling.
In one more day, they got up to 772.
Wow.
These are some enormous changes in 1 day that can take place. Like this is not only a lot of games, but this is also, just like some big losses. Like literally their downswing from 764 is a bottom four, bottom four, bottom four, bottom four, bottom four. And they're like, all right, maybe that's enough for now. Let's take a short little break. And then it's like the normal spikes that you see going up where like you'll have some bottom fours peppered in here, but then suddenly you string together some wins.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just right there. Like imagine if this downswing has changed at all. And I talk about this a lot with like the first or eighth like play style thing where it feels like you hit the elite level when instead it turns into first or fifth. Like when you can cobble together some fifth place finishes where you are absolutely not in the running to win the lobby, like that is such a big difference when it comes to tournament play. And just like even from a ladder perspective now, we're focusing and zoning in pretty closely to just a couple different points now because of this snapshot here. But now you have me excited about this one because this isn't one that I saw either. I've been definitely digging a lot deeper into the ladder profile for this one because it's been such a hot topic for the players lately where they're just like, some of the players are like, ladder sucks. It doesn't matter. Don't even look at it. And other players are like, if you can't do well on ladder, you just suck in general. And I'm like, wow, just, this is some good trash talking. This is what I'm here for right now. That's the kind of stuff I want to hear. And that's the kind of stuff I want to see is players doing that because, naturally I'm going to take the grandstand here and be like, it matters sometimes. And I feel like the snapshot is really where you can focus in on that one. Setsuko is always at the top, it feels like, but I also feel like that every single time I load up Twitch that Setsuko's streaming, and he's playing a lot. And I'll tell you what, when I find someone that complains more than I do, that is, wow, that is quite surprising. But Setsuko is very good, but I don't know. I don't weigh the ladder the same way everybody else does. It's impressive. But I'm always going to look at the tournament performances and really take that to heart because I feel like having that additional pressure on you is a big deal. And it's one of the reasons why I want to see these LAN events get going and I want to see these stakes get higher is because, a lot of times the players don't take this seriously because they feel like the prize pool isn't that big. And so they're like, it's just not really that much. I'm not too worried about it. If that prize pool suddenly gets a lot bigger and you have to work a little bit harder to get there, that is that additional pressure I'm looking for because I want to see who cracks under that and who absolutely just gets inspired and roars up because of it.
Yeah.
And just plows through the lobby because everyone else can't handle the pressure. I want to know.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when people talk about the flow or like the zone, right? Like of when you're competing and you're able to just, without thinking, make every right decision because you're just in that almost meditative state of just, I don't even know how to describe it, but
like
whatever
a
it
transcendence.
is. Yes, it is a transcendence. And there's something about that we're definitely missing because we're online. I think that's much easier to really get into that zone and to feel that energy in person. So I did want to just say 3 players I think everyone should be looking out for in the open bracket portion of Astral Cup are going to be Clear, Chung Money, and who was the other person I had? Oh, Malala. Those are my three players I think everybody should be looking for in the open bracket portion of this event. And I do want to say we have no callers right now, and I am totally fine to keep talking to Admirable all night. We have no shortage of things to say, but if you guys want to get in, let me hear your takes about Astral Cup, or what we can also talk about right now, I'll introduce, which is the Don't Talk If You Don't Know Power Rankings. Unless you want to keep talking about Astral Cup, Nathan, was there anything more you really wanted to say about it?
There's so much more I could say. I'm down to move on to whichever one you want to, and we could revisit this.
I'm down to revisit. If anyone has a call about Astral Cup, feel free to drop it in Discord.
I'm looking at this list, and I just there's one really standout point. I'll just make this right now. Chalky is in the top 100. Chalky's sitting at number 96. Chalky was a professional Hearthstone player who, for pretty much the entire time, I called the best player in the world, and I still, to the end of the day, will believe that. Chalky low rolled every tournament he was in. It wasn't even close. Like he even low rolled the dream hack that he won.
Wow.
He just played it so well, and his decks were so far ahead of everybody else at that point. And the lineup was done, and he understood how to do the banning and picking system better than everybody else. He's sitting at 96, and Chalky actually had more games played than I did. so far in this one. And I was like, ah, damn, I know Chalky loves TFT, but like this guy's a developer. Like he's a
really?
full-time job. Yeah, he works on the Hearthstone side now. I guess I can't say I don't know if he currently still does. Like it has been a few months since I've spoken with Chalky like on a personal level. I mean, I believe he still works there. I don't have see any reason why he wouldn't, but it's like this is a player who develops a game and comes in and makes themselves at the top 100 in TFT, like one of the most complex, like dot your I's and cross your T's, sort of look over everything constantly all the time. And he's here after working a full-time job. If that's the case, like that is just like, what could I even say at this point?
Yeah.
I'm noticing a lot of card game players coming into TFT and really starting to work their way up though.
I also do want to say that there are a handful of players who will be competing at the Tactician's Crown in New Jersey that are also competing in the Astral Cup. Notably, Uwu Daniel, who competed in Challenger Series for set 6 as well. I know he'll be playing some of the NG players, the No Grass clan or guild or crew, whatever you want to call them. Tay, I believe, is in there. Maybe NG Poppin made it as well. And then a couple other players who I cannot confirm or deny yet, so I'll have to hold on to that until next episode. But there are definitely a handful of players at Tactician's Crown that will be competing first in the Astral Cup. I don't know that much about Hearthstone players that come into TFT, but it does seem like a lot of players with this card game background tend to come into TFT and then have no problem just popping off in the game.
Oh no. It really is very similar in the decision-making regard. The difference, of course, is going to be the time pressure that you have. And you do have to have some micromanagement as well. And some, actual, APM that takes place.
Yeah.
This is where my weakness truly shines, is repositioning my board. Like I miss it so much. And I'm like, gosh, I really wanted to swap sides here, but there's no way I can move 4 units that quickly.
Right,
I'm like,
right.
4 units? How hard could this be? It's just because your mind is so consumed on the decision aspect of it. But as you kind of keep playing, you get a little bit better at it. But yeah, it's definitely something that has come into this, and definitely one of the strengths I had coming into the game. But it's just I've always hated the drafting portion of card games. But for some reason, there's a drafting format that's called Cube in physical card games, where you actually build your draft pool yourself. And that has become a much more popular format over the last several years. And I will say TFT definitely feels a lot more like a cube than it does like the draft. The draft is you're just cracking open packs and hoping you can find something big. In the cube, you already know what's there. So you can take things in speculation and look for opportunities and windows there. That's what TFT is. TFT feels a lot more like a draft cube than like an actual booster draft, which is, in my opinion, still one of the shittiest formats ever and just shouldn't be part of Magic competition or card game competition in general.
I didn't realize that was actually like an official format for tournaments. I thought that was
terrible.
more like you're playing with your friends and you just buy a couple packs and do something fun.
Which that part of it is fun, right? You're sitting down with your friends, you're having a drink and you're talking about stuff and you're seeing who got the biggest spike. When this comes to tournaments on this one, I absolutely hate it. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. You're having the highest level players in the world seeing who can crack open the best card. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
This is stupid.
All right. Well, with that said, I do want to move on to the next topic, which I'm sure if no callers come in from the Astral Cup, I really hope that this will at least get a couple hot takes or opinions. Is that I'm going to show my ballot for the first Don't Talk If You Don't Know Power Ranking live for all of you to see. The only people who have seen this so far are Bryce and Dan and whoever else maybe they showed to build out graphics. I'm going to reveal this right now, and for all you podcast listeners, I'm going to go through and list it out from 15 to 1. So at number 15 is Kuramex. At 14 is Asa. At 13 is Noob Owl. At 12 is K3 Soju. At 11 is Bertosaurus. At 10 is Goobums. 9 is Solus. Goobums is going to be so pissed about that. I already know Goobums is going to be pissed about that. At 8 is Robin. 7 is Milk. 6 is Spencer. 5 is Dish Soap. 4 is Socks. 3 is Setsuko. 2 is Ramblin'. And 1 is Spicy Appies.
Wow.
Yeah, there is some stuff going on here. But I feel pretty confident that I can defend most spots on here. I do want to point out, though, the major oversight in this list, and maybe it's not a major oversight, but I feel like a Nico should be on here. I think that I should have pushed harder to put a Nico in my top 15. And I think that that was a miss. And I also do want to recognize, and I want to say this out loud, that I did value legacy in my rankings because we're so early on in the set, because we haven't seen any of these players play in tournament. I did weigh prior tournament results of past sets into how I saw these players. Darth Nub wants to know, what's the metric for power rankings? Strength at Astral Cup. The official system for it is if all of the top players played in a tournament with 500 games, who would win most often. Something along those lines. So it's assuming the strongest level of play in a tournament setting. So I'll open this up to you, Nathan, to hear your thoughts on it. But I do want to say, any caller that wants to talk about my ballot, feel free. Put a take in there. We'll bring you on the show right now.
I need to look up a couple of things for this because, I will say that a power rankings thing, this is like one of the things I basically have not done.
It is tough. It's actually...
I'm about to get flamed so hard for this. It
is hard to really put a list together, especially when there are no tournament results, because the reality is, even take a look at Tetsuko or Dish Soap's ladder lobbies. Yes, they're stomping everybody in lobbies, in their lobbies, but they're not playing in lobbies that they would ever be playing in a tournament setting. That is just the reality of it, especially when you consider tournaments like mid-set finale, regional finals, or challenger series. They would just never have a lobby that looks like that. And so as much as I want to say Dish Soap is just number one for having a 3.22 average placement across 220 whatever games, it's just not going to be what it looks like at a tournament level. And it's hard for me to really put as much stock into that when Dish Soap himself has not actually performed to a high level in tournament in the past, despite being rank 1 or being a ladder god previously.
Yeah, so this is where the advantage of not being a tournament player actually comes into perspective for me, because now I can say whatever I want to. And I did put together a list at some point because I was asked to do this. And I'm going to post my top 7 from what this list was. This was for, oh crap, I wish I would have labeled this. Instead, it's just labeled as Notepad number 9 on my desktop. This was for a tournament I cast. This was for a big one. I want to say it was for the regionals maybe. But I'm going to go ahead and post this in chat. This is a copy paste. So when I made this list, something I did is I went back and modified it after watching the players actually play in the event. And I put a lot of pluses next to names where I was like, I'm going to place this player higher next time just because I know that they're strong when it comes to these settings. And I placed a lot of minuses next to players' names because I was like, it seems like every time I watch you in a tournament, you just don't play the same way.
Can you go through the list that you posted just for podcast listeners?
Yeah.
Quick?
So on the first one, this is top 7 I posted on this. This is a 24 player list. The first one was Ramblin'. Second was New Bow. Third was Spicy Appies. Fourth was Belay. Fifth was Goobums. Sixth was Setsuko. And seventh was Socks. Next to this, I put a lot of minuses next to New Bow's name because I feel like every time he's in a tournament, it is just not the same view. Like I watch him play on ladder and he just stomps everybody and it's very casual and nonchalant. Plays in a tournament, I feel like, maybe he's just low rolling every single game too. Tournament setting, there's a lot less opportunities to see what's going on. And you definitely don't get as many games. But every single time it's been a tournament, it feels like I haven't seen it. Same for Setsuko on this one. Setsuko stomps the ladder. There's no question. I don't want Setsuko's in my lobbies. He's going to beat me up every time. But when you now pit him against the other elites that are out there who are doing the same thing on ladder, I feel like Setsuko's not coming up to it. And that tournament profile list, when you go and look at that on the Liquipedia page, we're looking at Clash of Dragonlands, 11th place. NA Finals, it's 12th. Innovation Cup, 31st. Mid-set Finale, 4th. Strong finish. 3rd at a Challenger Series. Good. Reckoning NA Regional Finals, or NA Finals, 6th place. And then a Challenger Series 3rd, another Challenger Series 2nd, and then...
That actually doesn't include a lot of his bad performances too.
This does not. It doesn't show. It's not going to show you a lot of what the
it's
non-highlighted
a
ones
9th place finish in a Challenger Series, a 97th place finish in a Nightbringer Cup. I think he had 3 different day 1 or day 2 exits in set 4 that just are not on Liquipedia because we never went all the way back to dig up all those results.
There's no doubt that Setsuko is clearly a strong player, but when it comes to a tournament performance, you'll notice I put 3 minuses next to that name on this list. I put 7 on Nubal very disappointingly. I feel like my emotions kind of got the flare of me there. I definitely feel like that Nubal is just he just hasn't had the opportunity yet. But for Setsuko here, I'm not putting him in my top 8. I'm just not doing it. Like, he's very good. He's very strong. If you want to know who the strongest players on the ladder are, yeah, Setsuko's definitely going up there. The guy crushes it. Tournament performance, until I see it, I am never putting him in my top 8. And I'm not even kidding on this one. You want to talk about hot topics here? Setsuko is not in my top 8. It's not even a consideration in my mind.
I'm going to go to bat for Setsuko here because I think that 6 months ago, I would have agreed with you. But I think that Setsuko has had some pretty good performances in the last 6 months. Like, I forget, was it second or third at Challenger Series for set 6? I remember he could have gotten second place if he had forfeited one of the games or something like that, where he could have placed second and then he actually played the game out and then somehow got a worse placement or whatever it was. He had a good result at Challenger Series. I know he made final day at mid-set finale. I don't remember exactly where his placement was. Was it second or no?
Well, when I'm looking at mid-set finale here, this was 4th place. When I'm looking at the NA Challenger Series, it was 3rd place.
Yeah. So I would consider both of those very strong results. When I talk about Setsuko to people, I feel like his biggest issue is that he just doesn't have the win. And he's entered more tournaments from, and I'm basing this off memory, but I'm pretty confident Setsuko has entered more tournaments than anyone else in TFT, and he hasn't been able to lock in that first place finish. And because he had that string of mediocre results in sets 4 and 5, it kind of outweighed even the good results he had, like those Challenger Series that you mentioned that were in set 5. I do think, though, that Setsuko had pretty good results in set... Actually, no, I would say he had good results in set 6. He did not finish as strong as he probably needed to officially change his reputation. But I do think that Setsuko's performances in set 6 are good enough that I no longer consider him a ladder warrior. I consider him a very strong player and even a strong tournament player who's just significantly better on ladder than he is on tournament, mainly because he's just the best ladder player in North America. So I don't know. I think it's fair to put Setsuko. I mean, I put Setsuko 3rd, which I think is probably a little high. Maybe it depends. We'll have to see. But I want to give him some credit because I do believe that Setsuko's on the trajectory of being able to figure out how to tie his strength on ladder into the flashes of strength that we've seen in tournament. And if you can figure that out, I think that we're going to see a whole new side of Setsuko moving forward.
Oh, I have no doubt about that angle. Like, that take I think is spot on. But I'm on the ladder warrior side.
Yeah.
I think it's just, it's hard to say that you're having a string of low rolls when you finish as high as this guy does on the ladder. Like, it's not even close.
True.
Like, he's stomping everybody. It's enormous. Like, now granted, the amount of games you play here is going to be a big differential for that, but just I don't think the tournament scene's there. I feel like his tournament finishes, they're good, but that's it. Like, does that highlight a player for me? Oh, their tournament finishes are good. That's just the way that I see it at this point. Like, every single time I tune in anywhere where we're talking about TFT players, so it's Setsuko, and I'm like, when the fuck is this guy going to get a win? All right. Like, I want to see
It's hard to get a win, though.
It's very hard. But like you said, this guy has entered so many tournaments.
He has.
And he's crushing it everywhere. I genuinely feel like this isn't, granted, it technically is an assumption from my perspective, but I genuinely feel like the pressure's a lot on Setsuko when it comes to this tournament setting. And I feel like he's missing something. Something is not there when he's playing on tournaments that is there when he is playing on ladder. And honestly, that could be the stakes, even though the stakes are pretty low. It's like a reputational stake at that point. Just, it's a pure mental perspective, I think. Because he clearly has what it takes to get there. Why isn't he getting there?
No, it's true. I mean, the answer is, one, the lobby strength is going to be different ladder versus tournament. But I still think, the point you're making about, like, why can this guy 19 out of 20 top 4 on ladder and then go bot 4 6 games in a row in tournament? Obviously, that's hyperbolic. I'm exaggerating, but that's not something we've never seen before. I remember in set 5, we saw that with Nubal, who at the time was just completely dominating the ladder. It really did feel like he was averaging 16 to 17 top 4s out of his last 20 at all points during the season. and then he would enter tournaments and go bot 4 out of 6. And yeah, it probably is ladder strength, but honestly, I don't know. I mean, a lot of top players would probably say that they're playing really strong lobbies on ladder. And if they're going to make the argument that they're playing in a lot of, like, I know that's a take that Asa had where he said, oh, a lot of people don't realize how strong these lobbies are when we're playing in ladder. The way I see it, if you're going to make the argument that you're playing strong enough lobbies on ladder for it to weigh into rankings, then you also have to hold the opinion that when you bot 4 in tournament 4 out of 6 games, then it's because you didn't play as well as you play on ladder. You can't have it both ways. It's either that the lobbies aren't strong enough on ladder or that you just aren't performing in tournament. You can't have the excuse in your favor in both directions.
I'm going to try to take the excuse in both ways in my favor. I'm going to demand more every single time, but I'm with you on that regard. Like we're doing review right now. I'm not tied into this top player strength shenanigans that's going on, but I don't see it. If you want my opinion, Setsuko is not doing well in Astral Cup. Full stop.
Oh man. Oh gosh. All right. I'm not with you there. I think that Setsuko, I think this kind of tournament works in Setsuko's favor. It's an open bracket event. He will have players who are not in the top 32 in his lobbies, especially like on that day 3 when he's going to be competing against 32 other players that were not floated into the final day. So I think that Setsuko, it's pretty safe in my mind that Setsuko makes it to final day here. I think. I want to say that's true, but I
can feel you leaning towards my side, though. I can feel it. Admit it, Gangly. This was truly the mistake in your top 15 list here.
No. That was not
Come to the dark side.
I'm curious to know, is there anything that does stand out about this list that I put together, though, that you feel like is egregious or that you just completely disagree with? I mean, Setsuko's the big one, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that is,
how do you feel about Spicy Appy's number 1?
I don't think I would have put Spicy Appy's number 1, but again, I'm extremely biased, and Guwams is always going to be in my top 1 spot. But I definitely can see it there. Like,
can I give you my argument? Can I give you my argument?
I want to try to give you my counter argument to this idea first, which is that I feel like that Spicy Appy's doesn't take enough risks.
I don't know. I feel like
he's too open and too flex sometimes.
Oh, I see. So you're saying that he's not. It's a higher risk to play it narrow. You're saying to put yourself in a box that feels riskier to you than to say like
a lot
I'll
of times.
Anything.
Yeah. I think so, yeah. And when it comes to the setting, it's just he really demonstrates his ability by being able to kind of approach it from any angle and still do very strong. I would say that's one of his major strengths, but at the same time, it feels like a double-edged sword. Like when you're playing against these lobbies that are this stacked, you're going to have to take risks at some point. Like you're going to look around this lobby, like when a prismatic augment hits all of a sudden, and everyone's board just enormously got powerful, and you cannot just keep following this line of like, let me just put some solid stuff into play and rank up some gold, and let's go to the next level and see what we get. Like you're going to have to do something. And I feel like that's where players really start to stand out in my mind, is when they're put in those scenarios, they just accept it. And they're like, well, this could be an 8th. Yes. But do I really have a choice if I need to win this lobby? No, I got to do something.
No, I feel like the two sides of the coin are like, you have someone like Appy's who really is playing from every angle possible, right? And then you have someone like Spencer, and Spencer's like, do I really need to know if Double Trouble Karma Reroll is that good? And, at a certain point, Appy's knows the answer. He actually played it today on stream. So I see what you're saying. There is a certain risk in putting yourself in a box and saying, I'm going to play the lines that I know. And if I don't play those lines, I'm opting into that risk. But I know that if I'm in a position to play from comfort, I'm going to be top 4 every time. So I get that. The way I see Spicy Appy's, though, is that he is a limit tester. He's an intuitive player. He plays based on his feel of the game because he reads what the abilities do and he understands how the units interact with each other. And based on the knowledge he's built up over the course of a set, he's able to whip out these lines in tournament that nobody else is seeing. I mean, we saw it with that Gnar game last set that everybody freaked out over, and rightfully so. The thing I want to put in Spicy Appy's favor this set is that typically he does not perform as well as he's performing on ladder. Right now, I think he's ranked 7 on ladder, which I would say is above average for where he normally sits. And there was a point in time where he actually was rank 1. And I think that coupled with Spicy Appy's ability to perform in tournament, his high ladder ranking, which shows that he's able to use this intuition to beat worse players is probably a sign that since he's already shown he can do the same thing to the best players, he is in a good position to perform well with the best of the best. I know he didn't do that well at Twitch Rivals from what I understand, but I'm willing to say that that was a blip, that Spicy Appies is going to win the Astral Cup, and that he's the best player in North America right now. Wow. I don't think that many people agree with me, though, but I think it's very fair to say. I think that if you were going to say that he was ever number one, that now is a relatively fair time to say it. Because I think that there were better arguments in set 6 that people wouldn't give him. Or there were better times in set 6 where it was maybe more appropriate to say he was rank 1 that nobody else would have given him. And so I'm going to say that because I can't go back in time and say that he's rank 1 then, I'm going to stick to my guns and say that he was rank 1 right now.
Okay. I could roll the dice with you on this one. I wouldn't be upset rolling the dice with you on this one. I'll put it that way. But I'll tell you what I am upset about, and it's just not placing Milk at number 1 every freaking time. Milk is just so unbelievably strong, and he says some pretty wacky stuff when I'm watching his stream. I think some of that is content related. But he just gets it. Every single time I've watched Milk play a tournament, it's been just like, bravo. That's what I want more of every time. And again, I feel like it's one of these things where the name is just Delicious Milk or Milk GG or now Milk or Milk Guy. Like it's always something that like it's hard for it to stand out because I pay so much attention to monikers and they stand out a lot to me when I see very elaborate ones or unique ones. I feel like I just always forget to put him in this top position because his name is just Milk. Something that I basically just don't ever think about at all anymore. I'm not 9 years old and eating cereal, so Milk doesn't really come to my mind at all. So when just that name kind of crops across the screen, that's where like the ADHD aspect of it kicks in, and it just puts it into a back priority slot for whatever reason. I guess quite literally, I think it's because the moniker is just not unique. But golly, it is hard for me to not put Milk somewhere in the top 3 every time. And every time I have done it in my head, I look back at the tournament and I go, why wasn't Milk in the top 3? Even if he didn't have the top 3 finish, he is just playing out of his mind every single time. I don't know how he sees the lines that he sees sometimes or how to get to the spots where he wants to be with the opening or the mid game that he had. But somehow you look up 3 rounds later and he's right there. And it's like, I actually queued into a lobby with Milk today. And that was the exact feeling that happened too. I looked at his board and I was like, I'm going to stomp this guy. This is going to be great. I look up 5 rounds later and I was like, holy crap, how did I get 7th here?
Right.
Because I was steaming this lobby. I'm just like slinging stuff into play. It feels like Mort is just granting his blessings from the heavens above. And then at some point, Milk just delivers me like an 18-point hit. And I'm like, all right, this is bad. I am now in the bottom 4 suddenly. I've been in the number 1 slot in this lobby for a very long time, and it's not coming together. Somehow he scraps and cobbles together some board using Varus, of all things to be considered, and it's working. And I'm like, how did you get here? Like, because I remember I was watching a stream. It was just like a background like noise for me at some point, and I heard him say Varus, and I was like, Varus? And I just kept playing my game. I'm laser focused. I look up few runs. He's got a 3-star Varus. He's got units in play. Like his augments are wild. He's got like 2 or 3 Zeeks in play with like the better together augment that's going to magnify those aura buffs. Yeah, and he's just steamrolling the lobby at that point. And I was like, how did you get here? Yeah, like, I've had one Varus game out of like 150 so far.
I feel like if I had to make a tier list of like who is the best player in North America when it clicks, Milk has to be number 1 on that tier list every time, right? I mean, I feel like he's kind of known for being that player when he knows the answer of what's the strongest comp or what's the strongest line, or even like the strongest set of comps, like if it's an AD flex thing where he has a couple different lines he typically plays in. Milk is, even just reputation alone, people will scream night and day about how Milk is the best player in North America. I would say personally, it's early set. I don't think anybody doing their ballots has watched as much as they really would have liked. And you have to kind of take a certain level of recognize that I'm relying on like word of mouth or data from ladder or the very little that I've watched these players play. I think that someone could convince me to put Milk higher. I'm not married to him being in like that top 7 middle of the pack spot. I would say the main reason I actually did put him there was because he was lower on average than I expected him to be. But I also think, from what I understand, he did not have a super high game count. So I don't think it's that he's like hard stuck. I think it's more that he's just not trying to grind super, super hard and get his games in. So I could definitely be swayed either way. I will say I'm actually very surprised that nobody has any opinions on this ballot. This is literally your chance to come in and hard flame me for my ballot. So I'm gonna assume that every single person watching this show thinks that I have the perfect ballot. So thank you, I guess, for stroking my ego. That's the last thing I need. But I guess here we are.
A lot of these names I see, it's just, where are they in my head?
Yeah.
Like seriously, when I stack it up piece by piece, it's like, is Spencer better than Milk? I don't think so. I don't think so right now either. Like, I've watched a bit of Spencer, but not too much. I think that Spencer's tournament performances were very strong, but I think a lot of that times, it's, you mentioned Spencer earlier. It's like, does he really need to know all these other comps, or does he need to know the one that's the strongest? Because he's going to go there. I feel like when his preferred play style is not spot on, that his tournament performances definitely get a little bit worse in that regard.
Right.
But when they're there, they're there. When I look at next to Dish Soap, I don't think so. When I look at it next to Socks, I feel a debate. When I look at it next to Setsuko, this isn't even clear in my mind. This is the biggest flame on the list to me. Next to Ramblin', I do think that Milk is a little bit stronger. When I look at next to Spicy Appies, again, I feel a little bit of a debate here, but I think that Milk is stronger. And I just go down this list every single time I do like a comparison side by side. It feels like Milk is the number one every time I do it. And it's just, every single time I've anyone that's listed in my head, again, I regret it. So I think Milk at number 7, that's a big flame in my head. I think Setsuko on the list in general, that's a big flame in my head.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's my hottest take, I think, of the day here. Solus at 9.
Solus at 9 is for a handful of different reasons. I think that Solus, for one, Solus is kind of on his typical trajectory of having 2 very high level accounts. With his I think win trade account is Solus.
Yeah, he's got a very high Lost Ark account that's taking place right now, and a very high TFT account.
Is he still playing a lot of Lost Ark?
It wouldn't surprise me if he's doing his dailies while he's playing the tournament.
He has a lot of games in for TFT, which doesn't mean that he's not playing Lost Ark, I guess. But he definitely has way more games played in set 7 than he had in 6.5, which is a good sign, because he got 8th at regionals despite having like 60 games played in 6.5. There's something unreal about Solus. I'm telling you, anyone who puts Solus outside of their list, puts him outside of the top 10, he's going to come back and inexplicably have an incredible placement. This is maybe a predictive or preventative placement in my tier list, because I promise a projective
placement in the tier list as well.
Or delusional. I think that Solus is that player. He's got that X factor. He's got the inexplicables about him. No, I mean, I will say, like, the reality is, I think that Solus is one of those players who does well on ladder, and typically his performance on ladder is pretty indicative of how strong he actually is in comparison to the field. I think that in set 6 in particular, we really saw that he was able to marry his ladder performances to his tournament performances. And you could say all day and night that he just high rolled for 70 games across the competitive circuit. I'm never going to buy that. I'm absolutely never going to buy that he high rolled one of the best average placements across 70 games. I really do think that it's more about how Solus approached his tournament games, and he was able to make something click and able to marry that ladder skill set into the way he approaches tournament. So I actually do think that Solus is the kind of player where when he performs pretty well on ladder, it's relatively indicative of how he's going to perform in tournament.
Above Goobums.
Above Goobums. Oh man. Yeah. I mean, I will say, I don't think Goobums is quite the Goobums that we saw in set 6 right now. I think I'm expecting Goobums to be in my top 3 in set 7. I don't think he's there right now, but I'm expecting him to get there. This is just where we are right now. I would be very shocked if
stronger than Goobums right now.
Yeah. I do think so. But I would be highly shocked that even by the next patch, I have Goobums at 10.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, well that's a big highlight, at least on mine. Like that highlighter, it is, like when you're watching the teacher like scroll your answers wrong in high school, and then they get to one and they look at it and they just like circle it. Yeah, the number 9 here was Solus.
Okay.
I'm circling that one.
That's very fair.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the other ones I've talked about, they're just wrongs in my head. Bertosaurus, Soju, Nubal, Asa, Kurum. Kurum is kind of an interesting one, I think, to see in the top 15 here. I feel like this is one that is, I feel like there's a lot of competition here looking at, I'd say like,
oh yeah,
like the 11 to 15. I feel like there's a much more open field here, where these 5 could be.
Well, and even
Kurum is the most surprising one to me, I think.
It was tough. The 13, 14, 15 spots were really tough, especially because the people not on this list are people like Goose, DQA, Aniko. Like, how do you fit all of these players in the top 15? It's impossible. I mean, it's literally impossible. It's too hard. Kurum, one of the reasons I actually ended up putting Kurum in my list is, again, if anyone did see the data that I posted on Twitter where I compare average placements versus games played and the average trend line of a player on ladder, Kurum was very, very similar to the 6 players that I did point out in that tweet, where his average placement is significantly better than the average place of the average player with a similar amount of games. And I can pull it up to actually say about what it was. It looks like it's about 3.55 over the course of maybe 120, 130 games. 3.5 average is a really strong placement. Obviously, low game count does play quite a bit of a factor into that. It's not as strong as some other players that I did point out, like Robin or Dish Soap or Setsuko, but Kurum is on a path to really have some very strong ladder performances. Kurum obviously in the past has had strong tournament performances. He's made regionals for every set that he has actually tried to make regionals in, and of course was also a world's representative back in set 4. So I think Kurum has what it takes to be a strong tournament player when he's really trying and putting his all into the game. And I think that on ladder he's on a trajectory right now to show that he's one of the best players. So I think it's pretty fair.
Okay. That's a very strong points there. There's so much data to look at for this stuff that I feel like it's going to be impossible to be on point for every little single thing that's going to be here.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
that's a pretty strong argument here. That's a clap in my head.
We'll have to see. It's also so hard when it's early set because you don't really know where people are actually at. And as much as we want to say we're watching all of these players, like I haven't watched all 15 of these players play. I haven't. So at a certain level, we're making our best guess based on reputation, based on the data that we can see, and just, hoping the best. We really are rolling the dice a little bit.
Yeah, these are some big rolls. I like them though. I just, in my head when I look at this list, it's like Milk skyrockets to 1. Solus is like, this is the biggest argument I think of the list. And well, I aside from my flaming take of Setsuko, which I'm not going to put on here. I'm not even kidding. I'm saying it right now. Gosh, I hope I get proven wrong on this one too, because he is such a strong player when you watch him play the ladder. He really is. Why isn't it there in tournaments? I want to see it.
I definitely understand. I think that not saying he's top 15 though is a bit of a stretch for me. I don't know if I can say that I'm on the same page.
I'm gonna pull this rope as hard as I can then.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, it's not there in my head.
All right. No, listen, I respect it. I definitely respect it. Either way,
that makes one of us.
Either way, I'm really excited for the Set 7 competitive scene to start. I feel like I talked about this in the video I released where we talked about players to watch, that I do think that Set 7 has the potential to be a monumental set. The main thing I'm really hoping for is that we start to find different ways to make content that is more consumable about these tournament scenes, that we're able to draw attention to the tournament scenes. And the Astral Cup is our first go around of seeing what it's actually going to look like. So I don't know what Wisdom has up their sleeves. I hope they have something. I'm excited to see what we're actually going to get out of the tournament, but I really like the format of the Astral Cup. Excited to see all these players play. And I don't really have any crazy predictions apart from what I might have said before about maybe someone like Clear making like top 8. Either way though, I'm just excited to see it all play out.
I want this freaking pandemic to end. That's what I want. I want the lands for this. I want to know what it's like because TFT is just such a different game than everything else. It really is. It feels like you remember when Fortnite was blowing up and everyone was like, "Yeah, Fortnite," and then the game just kind of sucked, honestly. But it was just very exciting for a lot of people. It was just too much. Like on the micro side, where it's just like learning how to build this stuff and then hoping you land in the right spot. Okay, cool. It's got a very much like that aspect to it that TFT has, where you still have to find your 2-star units. You can't control that aspect of it. It's got like the random of baseball with the rhythm of basketball and the planning that football has. It's just all combined into one, and we're getting to see that. When do we see it live? That's what I'm hoping for in the set 7 scene, because I feel like that's the one element that feels like it's missing from TFT right now, is to feel that energy in a live setting and to be able to portray that in the broadcast set. Because right now, every single time I've cast TFT, I have no idea who I'm looking at, and I can't see their energy. I can't see their face. I can't see if they're happy or if they're getting excited about something or if they're very disappointed or if that pressure is really there. Camera's off most of the time. Like, I need that in the live setting. My whole life has been going to these events and either playing in them or casting them in real time in a real setting, traveling to different continents to see these games unfold. When do we get that for TFT?
I know.
I want it so bad. Gangly, I'm looking forward to this. It's a great time for you to do another hashtag ad and plug your stuff in.
Yeah, no, seriously, though. I will say, if anyone does want to experience TFT on land, it's a good time to come to New Jersey, the Garden State, the most beautiful of all states. Definitely not the armpit of New York, like anyone may say. But no, seriously, Tactician's Crown number 2 is coming up July 23rd. It is a TFT LAN event. We have some very high-level talent coming out to the event. Uwu Damn Daniel in chat right now. It's very fun. Please come. I agree with that. That's a great take. That's the best take we've heard on the show so far, actually. But seriously, if anyone is interested in actually experiencing TFT on LAN, highly recommend it. You can find all that information on my Twitter or in my Discord. We have all the information there. Now, Nathan, I gotta say, obviously, I'm a bit bummed. We didn't really have any callers come in, but still had a lot of fun. We got to talk through everything. I think now is probably a pretty good time to start wrapping things up. So before we go, any closing thoughts on the show before you get to your shout outs?
Well, I it's always, I wanted to hear someone call in because I either want to get flamed or flame somebody. And that opportunity missing here is, it's a heartbreaker for me. But, looking at this list that we have coming up for Astral Cup, like, this is going to be a barn burner. There are so many strong players in this one. There are players that haven't had time, I'd say, to really try to solidify themselves as one of those top players. You look at this top 32 and it's stacked going into the buy round. And then you look at the next players on the list. Even you go to the waiting list and there are plenty of names here that you recognize and that you see, and like, these are strong players, no doubt about it. And I'm just hoping that this turns out to be as competitive as I want it to be, because my gosh, I just want to know when it strikes and people don't care about anything but the wins anymore. That's when you're getting that best TFT in there, is when everybody is fighting tooth and nail to make the most out of nothing. Because we're talking 32 stack players where you have an argument for just the top 15. Okay, what does the top 24 look like? And you're playing 8 players at a time in a lobby. Like, you're gonna get 8s. Like, when you get an 8th place finish at Worlds, you look at that chat and it's like 8th. Ha! And I'm like, that's still 8th in the world right now. Mind you, it's very hard to get to this point, let alone finish above that once you're even there. So I feel like that hasn't been demonstrated. It hasn't really, it hasn't gotten in there just yet. But when it does, this game is a beauty. And I think set 7 is the critical moment. Astral Cup is now the first big one we're having. Get ready.
Oh, wait. We've got a caller. We've got a caller who actually wants to make a take about about Astral Cup. So I'm going to bring him in. Darth Noob is here.
Yo.
Darth Noob, where are you calling from?
California.
All right, well, what do you want to talk about, Darth Noob?
So I think you guys are underestimating day 1 and day 2. Because tourneys right after big patches, they're won by players who can quickly understand the meta, not by the overall best players. So nobody's getting day 1 in the same fashion that Ramkev did. But even though the format's improved, historically good players are still going to have a very high chance to get knocked out day 1 and day 2 because they just can't adapt quickly enough.
How much?
So like,
keep going.
So like for instance, I think Ramblin', like day 1 Ramblin', that's actually kind of spooky because he only has like 3 days to prep and like really learn the meta. So whereas I think he's not actually someone who learns the meta like instantly, you know. Like if he had been auto slotted into day 3, I think that's really scary for everyone else. But for day 1, like I think he does have a high chance to just get knocked out due to not being familiar enough with the meta.
Okay, so I actually, you know what, I want to give you some kudos on that, because a good point I didn't even think about is Zon Cup is where we saw this exact thing play out. It was, I think it was Zon Cup. It was a tournament 3 days after the patch launched, and we did see Ramblin' not make it out of his day 2 lobby, which is where he was seated. So he didn't make it out of any of the days that he competed in, and he did attribute that to playing in a tournament where it was just a few days after the patch. How I mean, we don't know how big the B patch is, but it does. I know they used the phrasing that it's going to be a big B patch. How much weight do you two put into that? Like how large do you think that is going to be, and how much of a disadvantage do you put a player like Ramblin' at because we're playing on a B patch?
Okay. So I think it's huge. Like I know I'm gonna be just like watching a lot of the games to really learn the patch, like because you really need to have an up-to-date understanding of like what the strongest comps are, what like the strongest variations of those comps are, and it's just like there's a lot of prep work that you have to do on each patch, and if you're not able to do that prep work quickly enough, you're going to you're not going to be performing well. So okay, I kind of forgot the question, but
no, it's okay. Let me ask you this actually, Darth Noob. The state of the patch right now, assuming that Swain is nerfed a bit and is brought back to a reasonable power level, how wide do you think this patch actually is?
I mean, it's not that wide because mages are still kind of in the gutter.
Yeah.
Like, because there's still just like Corky, Zaya, Xiaoyu, and the Swain. So
yeah, this is actually set 6.5. Like Ramblin' was the AP flex player. And I don't even he can't be the AP flex player. I was watching Ramblin' the other day where he was saying like, oh yeah, I don't really play AP as much as I normally do because you can't. Like AP is just not that good. It's harder to play than AD is. So even stylistically, like I don't think that Ramblin' can only play AP flex, but that is the style that we've seen him opt into in the past. And I'd have to watch more Ramblin' to really get like a good feel on like where he puts himself right now. But obviously, I think it's fair to say that he's at a disadvantage if he can't play the style that he's historically opted into for the past few sets.
Yeah, like I haven't watched too much Ramblin' myself this set either, but some players they definitely need the game to be balanced to do well.
That's fair. That's a good argument for Milk being number 1 in the power rankings, right? It does not need the game to be balanced to be number 1. Admiral, what do you think about all this?
These are just excellent points to be making. I definitely feel like that was an emphasis we really didn't tie into to highlighting Astral Cup, was that it is it is right off the cusp of a patch. And when that hits, it's the players who have stronger intuition that tend to perform a lot stronger in those regards. And those often have been the players that I have highlighted the most. I feel like Ramblin' and Goobums are probably like 2 of the players I'd say that stand out the most from like my intuition standpoint. And they play more so to information, knowledge, and understanding of where the patch is sitting. As it develops, I feel like they get a lot stronger. So Darth Noob here I think is making an excellent point, which is just, this being right after a patch, that is a big weakness for players who are informational players rather than intuition and instinct.
Well, and actually, even going further, I know, Darth Noob, you made a comment in chat earlier on in the show when we were talking about Spicy Appies not performing in day 1 of Twitch Rivals. and you attributed that to just a bad read on the patch, right?
Yeah, Twitch rivals. Some people played mages on day one, and they all learned from that experience.
Yeah, there is definitely an element of TFT where you just have to know what's strong, and it's interesting to hear you say that Ramblin would be at a greater advantage if he were in day 3, if he was floated to the top 32, not because he has to play against a smaller field, but the advantage would actually be that Ramblin now has a week and a half to learn this patch without actually having to play in tournament games on that. And that's not a trait that everybody would share. There definitely are players who benefit from playing on a brand new patch and being able to find an advantage quickly. Someone in chat says, if someone isn't able to adjust, and this is Lawrence in chat, says, if someone isn't able to adjust to a patch in time, are they really the best player? Nathan, how do you feel about that?
Oh gosh, I love these points because it does make it harder. I mean, nobody has everything across the board, perfected. It's virtually impossible to be perfect across the board. So it's at this point, it's largely at that point, it kind of just based on like when the actual tournaments unfold at that point, right? Because we're almost always going to weigh it in on results, and such. There's some players like I think myself, for instance, I think I get a lot weaker as the patch develops because now everyone I very much play on instinct and intuition. And when I'm able to strike it early on, I feel like that's where my strong performances actually come in. It's like at the start of a patch, if something clicked with me early and I go, no, I not only do I prefer this style, this is also something that I feel like I understand and that I know. I roll through it and it works pretty well. And honestly, I wish I could play more time when those things came up. But this is a good point to be making. If you're not adjusting quickly enough, like how long is that going to take? Who does go above you because of that? Well, that's largely performance related at that point.
Yeah, at a certain level, I think every individual person has their own metrics that they'll weigh differently. I would say, me personally, I would say that when I want to measure a player, I want to measure them assuming that they have the ability to learn a patch, and that small advantages like I'm able to figure out something that nobody else thought of is not as much of a factor to me, because at the end of the day, when we're talking about things like the World Championships or these really large events, that are like these majors in TFT, typically they're not going to be done on a patch that has little playtime on it, and players will have, or because they're at the end of the patch, it's going to be in a patch where the balance has been stabilized up until that point, where the game will be wider at the end of the set than the beginning. To me, I think it's more fair to judge players based on in that environment, which is why I would still say that I give the advantage to Ramblin, and still think it's very fair to say that he's one of the best players, even if he may not be the best player 3 days after the patch. He's probably the best player 9 days after the patch. And to me, I think that is very valuable, especially when you're looking at the context of these major high impact events like mid-set finale, regionals, and the World Championship.
Yeah.
All
right. Yeah. Bet, as the kids say these days.
Darth Noob,
I'm in.
Any follow-up thoughts on that before you go?
Yeah, I feel like being able to adapt quickly to patch, it's a valuable skill. But like Worlds, Mid-Set, all the major tourneys are played on patches where you have 2 or 3 weeks of preparation. We only have 3 days of prep. That's hard,
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's not easy.
And for anyone who doesn't know, Darth Noob, and I think I'm correct in saying this, you're actually competing in the Astral Cup, right?
Yeah.
How are
16?
you feeling? How are you feeling going into it?
I'm glad that I don't have to play day 1, day 2. So I'm feeling pretty confident, honestly.
Is that because of the float, or is that because of the prep time?
Yeah, because of the flow. I think I'm pretty good at the set. I think I'll have time to watch other people play to really learn how I want to play the patch. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Very nice, very nice. All right, well, is there anything you want to shout out before you go, Darth Noob?
Oh, okay. Let's see. Shout out to the competitive TFT Discord. Okay, yeah, I guess I have to shout out Claire. I guess. Yeah. Shout out to Claire for popping off for snapshots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
it.
Very nice. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Darth Noob, and good luck next weekend.
All right, thanks.
All
See
right.
ya.
You know what? Well, we got a caller in. It was at the end of the show, the tail end of it, but that was a fun discussion. Glad we were able to squeeze somebody in. But you know what? It is 9:30. We're at the end of the show. Nathan, I just want to thank you for coming on here. Before we go, is there anything you want to shout out?
It's just been a pleasure being here. That's Admirable on all the media fronts. Twitter is the one that I tend to use the least, which is still the most. So,
and you've been streaming, or was that a one-off? I saw you streaming the other day.
I definitely want to pick that up a little bit more. I don't think I'm going to be doing these, 7-8 hour streams, not this full-time streaming aspect I've been doing, but honestly, I do enjoy it. I find it quite relaxing at times. And it is fun to do. And I feel like it's just helpful as well. Like I still need to keep doing stuff like that. 2022 has been a weird one for me. I had a shoulder injury. It was a 2-point fracture. We got seizures medicated, and that's all. It feels like everything's under control right now, but it's been a rough one, but we're picking it back up and we're back on track. And, a large part of that is just due to the friends aspect of it here as well. Gangly, you've helped a lot, like in critical moments when, I just needed someone to talk to, and you've been able to hang out and just chat with me for a bit. Frodian, obviously a very big perspective on that. This is one of my closest friends. Esports Law, been a big one there, and Nature's we've played a number of Slay the Spire games together. It feels like we both share this very high passion of trying to kill this heart that is malicious and evil and has you trapped into this spire for eternity. And he just accepts and talks with me about all of these weird runs I have. I'm like, wow, look at this weird deck that I put together here. And he's like, oh, and he's like asking a question about it. I'm like, those little tiny aspects are so much more impactful than you can possibly describe. So it's just in chat right now. Oh, do you want to play? I'm down. Just Nature's, you're one of the greats.
Shout out to Nature's. Yeah, I love Nature's too. That's a great guy.
Yeah, but I need to eat some dinner right now. That's where my next shout out comes. Is thank you,
right.
Megan, for helping me live my life.
Of course. All right. Well, for everyone watching the show, appreciate you all coming out here. Shout out to Darth Noob for calling in. Love having that take. If you want to support the show, make sure you follow us on all social media. Hyrule Radio. You can subscribe to us on wherever you find your podcast, whether it's on YouTube or your podcast app. You'll find it all there. You can find me on Twitter at @gangly_. Also join my Discord. We've got a lot of stuff always going on there. You can find more information about the Tactician's Crown as well, coming up on July 23rd. TFT on land in New Jersey. Everything you ever wanted. So be on the lookout for more announcements regarding that event too. We have a lot coming through the pipeline. So thank you again for everyone who watched the show. Appreciate all the support we've had on the show. And that's it. Be good. Have a great night. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.